Hey guys, just here to talk to you a little bit about paper 2, ready for tomorrow. I hope that your first exam went well today. Don't worry if not, just do your best again tomorrow. So I'm just going to talk you through what it is that you would need to do. Okay, sorry, I'm just going to move this, but you can see, look, my miniature Dachshund's in the background, and then the miniature Dachshund on the floor. Saucy, look at the camera, good boy. Anyway, okay, so paper 2, you're going to be 5 questions. So the first question is a pretty straightforward question, and it is simply where you pick which facts are true and which ones are just made up and they're not true at all. So what I would recommend you do is go through each one and think, is it true? Can I find something to prove it in the text? And if you can, it's probably true. And what I would do is put a little T next to it. If you've got a pencil, do it in pencil, but if not, just don't worry. Just put a little T next to it, and then just literally go through TF, true, false, whatever. And then when you're sure you've got 4 true, then shade in the little blobs. Because what I saw people do last year is shade in a blob and then go, oh no, that's the wrong one, and then put a cross through it, and it just became a bit messy and you're not quite sure what they actually mean. So if you put true and false next to them, that's pretty easy, or T and F, and then actually shade in the blobs when you're sure, and you must have 4 true ones. That one they will always, sorry I'm scratching my arm, that way they will always ask you to do the true and the false one, and you will always be asked to just shade the true. Okay, so question 2 is pretty straightforward. This one is where you summarise the differences. So you're going to have 2 texts. Now that one is worth 8 marks, and because it's worth 8 marks, what you need to do is spend 13 minutes on it, because what we do is we do 8 marks plus 5, so that's 13 minutes. Hello Edwina. And so all you're going to do is you're going to read through the first article, which you probably would have already done already because of the select 4 true things. So you would have already read brilliantly. Julie's phone is ringing. Right, I'm really sorry, I've got to take a phone call in the middle of this. Hi, Alan. Okay, hang on, I'll come and get it, okay. Okay, guys, I'm really sorry, but my mother-in-law has left a handbag here, and so I've got to go down and genuinely welcome to my home. Sorry about this. I will get back to the paper in just a second. Hang on. Hi, Alan. I'm currently live streaming to all my kids at school, so don't worry. I don't know where it is. Up we go, up the stairs. Sorry, guys. Welcome to my world. Look, have a look at the dog. Hey, Poppy. Okay, just grab it, Alan. Oh yeah, it's there. Just grab it, and I'll lock the door on the way out. All right, thanks, Al. Okay, back on it. Sorry about that. Hi, I was answering my phone. Okay. In question 2, see you later. In question 2, all that you have to do is pick out the similarities and differences. So in question 1, you would have already read text 1 or source A. So then you're going to read source B. And you will be given a topic. So you don't just want to randomly summarise the differences or similarities. So say like it says, I don't know, say like it's about the dog's barking. Say like it's about your pets. And they say summarise the similarities and the similarities or differences. It'll be one or the other. Summarise the differences between the 2 dogs. Just write about the dogs, don't write about anything else, okay? Because if you write about other things like the goldfish or whatever, you won't get the marks. So it's only if you summarise the actual difference or the similarity that you've been told in the question that you'll get the marks. So it's question 2, summarise the similarities or differences. And all you have to do with this one is pick a difference and say what the difference is. So I don't know, one of the dogs is particularly aggressive in source A, whereas in source B they're not. And simply say what the difference is. That's how you get your first mark. Then the next bit you've got to do is put in textual detail to support that. So this is one of the only ones where you might put slightly longer quotes, but you can just embed your quotations. So you might say, the first dog is growling viciously and, or growling viciously, and then, I don't know, barking wildly. And then what you don't do is you don't do language analysis. So it's not where you start doing the connotations, but you just do an overall, it's like an AO1 inference. So it's what that tells you. So that might tell you that the dog is mean and is loud and is potentially a threat. That makes you feel, so you can talk about what you feel and what you think. It makes you feel that the dog wouldn't be someone you'd want to be around. So you do your inference, and then you simply compare it to the other dog. So, well, whatever the thing is. So it might be attitude to love or whatever it is. So you do another quote, and the other one was whimpering, and I don't know, whatever else the dog's doing, and then you do an inference from that. And what you need to do is infer from the difference. And the best way to do that is for you to say, this indicates or this implies, they're nice word stems or sentence stems for this question. This implies or this indicates that one dog is more aggressive than the other or is less friendly than the other. So the key words really for this question is this implies and this suggests. That's a nice easy one. And then you need a comparator. So you need to say if it's differences, however, if it's similarities, similarly. And then all you have to do is when you do the inference bit for the second text is use the words more or less, or you could say also. So, you know, you say more aggressive, more friendly, more kind, nicer, whatever you want. But if you use more or less, that will help you to compare and make inferences. Yes, Emily, this is from the unseen text. You'll have 2 unseen texts, and you read all of one for question 1 and then answer the questions, the true or false. And then for the second question, you have to summarise either the similarities or differences in a particular topic. So that's when you read the other one. All you need for this question is 2 paragraphs. So just pick out 2 differences, just pick out 2 differences, and then literally difference, quotation, inference. Then the next quotation from the second text, and then infer from the differences. And that's where you use your more or less. And you literally just do that twice. So the first difference might be about how aggressive the dogs were, and then the other one might be about their coat or their size or whatever. So it's simply 2 differences, and you need a quotation from both texts, and you need to infer from both texts. No subject terminology. So we need to get a point in the detail. So you will need to use textual detail. That's your quotation. Textual detail. That's what you get marks for. So you get marks for difference. So whatever difference you've identified. If it's a similarity question, you get marks for similarity. That's the first way you get marks. The second way you get marks is by proving that with your quotation. And they can be short quotes or slightly longer, but don't go more than a line. And then you get marks for your inferences. So this implies, this suggests. If you do this question and you don't put this implies, this suggests, you won't get very good marks. The most you'll be able to get is 1 or 2 marks out of 8. So as we said, this will be a 13-minute question. Don't spend loads of time on it. Just bang out a couple of paragraphs and then move on. Question 3 is just a language analysis question. So it's pretty straightforward to do. And you get marks for 3 things. So if you're watching this now, I would recommend that you note down what you're going to get marks for, and then tomorrow on your way to school, either walking or on the bus or whatever it is, however you come to school, I would recommend that you just remind yourself what you're going to get marks for. So question 1, well, it's obvious, just picking the right things. Question 2, you get marks for the differences, textual detail, inference. Question 3, you're going to get marks. It's a language analysis question. So it's an AO2 question, and you're going to get marks for the following things. 1, textual detail. That's pretty easy. And I want those to be mini quotes. So 1 word, maximum 2 words, unless it's a simile or a metaphor, and then you might pick out a longer one. So that's the textual detail. You're also going to get marks for subject terminology. So if you pick out a word, say, I don't know, trying to think of a word that is remotely interesting. Say that something had been smashed to smithereens. You pick out smithereens and you say that's a noun. Or, I don't know, beautiful, shining face. You'd pick out the participle shining, or you could say it was an adjective, that would be fine. So that's your subject terminology. You'll get marks for that, and you'll get marks for your textual detail. And then finally, you get marks for the effect of the language. So really what you want to do with the effect of language is you want to explain it fully. So lots of people only get 4 out of 8 on this, and the reason they only get 4 out of 8 is because they say something like the noun smithereens implies there's lots of different pieces and it could never be put together again, and there's lots of tiny bits. and that's fine, but that would only get you half marks broadly. And the reason why it would only get you that is because they're not linked. Those ideas aren't really linked. It just feels like a little bit of a list. So the best thing to do is to explain it. So you obviously use the word because. That's an easy way. So, for example, you could say the noun smithereens implies that it will never be put back together again because smithereens indicates there are lots of very small pieces. And then the next way to develop that a little bit further so it becomes clear and explained, which is how you get up into a next grade boundary or like part of the mark scheme, is that you go smithereens implies that it will never be put back together again because it's so small. And then the next bit you say is this makes the reader think it's really tragic or whatever it is. Simply, you would need to do that, so that language analysis, a couple of times to prove each point. So if it says, how do you feel about the monkey, for example, you'd think, right, 2 things I think about the monkey. I think the monkey's really freaking cute, and I think the monkey's surprisingly like a human. Fine. And then you'd find 2, maybe 3 at the most words that make you think he sounds cute, and you'd go, the writer presents the monkey as cute. Now that's an easy sentence start to begin with, because that's what the question will say. How does the writer use language to present the monkey? You'll say, the writer presents the monkey as cute, or whatever word you want to use. Ideally, you'd use better vocabulary, because the higher level vocabulary you use, the better you do. In fact, I read Jack Goodman's response for his language analysis today. It was spot on. His language was really, really good. So if you can use high level words, that will help you. Then you go in with your quotation. So he uses, I don't know, what's cute? He uses the adjective fluffy, and this indicates that he would be soft to touch, and it reminds you of a cuddly toy. This evokes in the reader a sense of affection because it seems innocent and like a young animal because it's so fluffy and it reminds them of cuddly toys. That kind of thing. Literally, you would only need to do that. So you, again, 2 paragraphs. So you go, 1 thing I think, he's cute, and then whatever quotes you can find to support that. The more quotes you've got, the better, because then you're starting to talk about the cumulative effect of language, and that's how you get to the top band. So to recap, question 1 is 4 true things. Just fill in the blobs, that's easy. Question 2, you're going to do 2 differences, and you're going to support those with textual detail. So you get marks for differences, you get marks for textual detail, and then you get marks for inferences. Inferences are the most important thing. So even if you did 1 paragraph with 1 difference and the inferences, that would be better than zooming through it and not doing very many inferences. That is the important bit. The third question is analysing language, where you pick out what you think about the topic in the question, and then you analyse individual words, and you get marks for subject terminology, so like nouns, verbs, metaphor, simile, textual detail, which is your mini quote, and your effect. I would just say, I know what paper it is, but be careful when you pick out similes that if you're going to do the effect of a simile, you actually understand why they have used that particular simile. Don't just pick out a simile because you know it's a simile, because if you can't talk about the effect, you won't get very good marks. Okay, the 4th question is a comparison question. So you have to compare how the writer thinks about whatever it is they think about. So they might say, how does the writer feel about the weather in both of them? And you've got to say, in source A, the writer thinks this, and you've just got to do your AO1 argument to begin with. So focus on source A to begin with, AO1 argument, whatever you think that the writer thinks. And just bear in mind, really, really bear in mind that if you talk about the weather, that won't be answering the question. You've got to talk about what the writer thinks about the weather. So it's all about what the writer's feeling and what the writer's thinking. So if you just say the writer thinks or the writer views, that's a really good sentence start to get you in there. So you just say the writer thinks and then whatever it is, and argue that as much as you can, and then say how you know it. So the writer thinks that the weather is really aggressive and horrible. They think that you wouldn't want to go out in it, and you know that because it says violently storming, something like that. Then what you can do is go into the individual words. So you go into AO2. So you go AO1, I think the writer thinks this, I think the writer thinks that. And it's just like basically your understanding of what the writer thinks. Then you go into AO2 and you go, the word violently indicates the weather's really cruel and mean. It could do you some damage. If you stayed out too long, you might end up getting not only wet from the rain, but also hurt. That kind of, so you go AO1, no, it's AO1 and then into AO2. The next bit's a little bit harder because that's where you're supposed to do comparison. So then you say, however, in source B, or similarly in source B. So you must remember those connectives. So similarly, however, likewise, I can't think of any now that I'm on here. And again, because it's a comparison, you do more than, less than. So for example, you might say, similarly, the guy in source B thinks that the weather is really horrible, but not as horrible as in source A, because he doesn't use the adverb violently, he uses, I don't know, the adverb loudly, which is, although it indicates that the storm would grab your attention, it wouldn't hurt you. So it's just about saying one writer does something more or less than the other, exactly like in question 2. The difference is that in question 2, you are summarising the differences, but you're only focusing on one narrow little topic that they've given you, and you're not analysing any language. Whereas in the question 4, you must analyse language. So if you don't pick out an individual word, tell me it's a freaking noun or whatever it is, and then say the effect. If you don't do that, you will lose half of your marks, which is just mental. So literally, even if you did nothing else from this question that said, I don't know, the writer thinks, whatever it is, I can tell this by the noun, it implies. If you literally did that, you would get yourself a few marks. But if you miss out the methods bit, which is the subject terminology, you'll lose marks. So what you get marks for in this question, number 1, comparison. And then the way you get comparison is however, likewise, similarly, and then more than and less than. Number 2, sorry, I'm swearing at you again. Number 2, textual detail. Number 3, writer's methods. So that's like simile, metaphor, I don't know. You could do structure, noun, verb, whatever. And then the final one is the actual ideas and perspectives of the writer. So the writer thinks this, the writer feels that. Then it's question 5, and that is a creative writing one. You will either have to write a letter, in which case you need the addresses at the top. Don't worry about which order. You could just do your own address. And then the date, and then a dear, whoever it is, blah, 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 letter. And then the final bit at the end of kind regards. It will be a formal letter, so kind regards or many best wishes or something like that. Not many best wishes, actually. Best wishes or many kind regards or something like that would work. You could get an article. If you get an article, Julie's just eating chocolate in the background here. If you get an article, you must. I want some. How do you know? If you get an article, you must put a headline. If you don't put a headline, it's not cool. Like, you don't read a newspaper with opinion pieces that don't have headlines, so you will lose loads of marks for your form even before you've begun. With this one, shorter the better. I do not want to read 4 pages of your creative writing. If you've got tiny writing like Crystal, it needs to be a page maximum, but you must paragraph. But if you've got slightly bigger writing like Edwina, I would give you some chocolate, Luke, but I can't. I'll bring some tomorrow. Crystal's just written, don't forget question 5 because she forgot it today. It's all right, Crystal, you're going to do it today. You're going to do it tomorrow. So with question 5, I've lost my train of thought now because I'm reading all your comments. You must paragraph. You must take a relatively formal tone, and I would much rather it was short and crafted, and you've thought about including semicolons to develop your argument, or you've thought about doing a dash to emphasise a particular point, or you've thought about your vocabulary and maybe starting with a subordinate clause to add to your argument. I would much rather you did that and it was really well thought through than you'd written me 4 pages of guff, to be honest. So craft, think about the words you're using, think about how can I persuade someone. This whole piece is all about showing your point of view. So you can absolutely write in the first person, I think this, I feel this, and then what you need to do is put in a couple of persuasive devices if they fit. What I don't want you to do is dump loads and loads of persuasive devices in there. Like, oh, I'm going to start with a rhetorical question and then I'm going to do some facts and a few statistics. Don't do that, because that will not get you marks. I marked so much crud like that this year and it was rubbish. What you want to do is do an argument. Imagine you're having an argument with some muppet on the playground and you're trying to persuade them of your point of view. And if you can think of a statistic that supports your view, pop it in. But don't pop in persuasive devices for the sake of it. So if you put in like one or two, and put in one or two and craft them. So really think about, like, is this persuasive? So don't just put, don't you think I'm right? Question mark, because that's not a great rhetorical question. Emily, you'll be terrific at it. Really, really craft your rhetorical question. So, like, don't just put like, "Is this right?" question mark, but like, "Is this really I don't know. Is this really acceptable?" question mark. "Is this really what we want?" question mark. "Is this really the very best we can do for our children?" That kind of thing. This is question 5, Amy. It's the creative writing piece where you just do your opinion. So I'm just going to do a quick recap and then I'm going to eat my chocolate. So question 1. You will have 8 bullet points. You have to decide which ones are true. Write your T's next to the ones you think are true on the left-hand side. And then when you've definitely got 4 and you're sure about them, and this will probably be from source A, fill in the blobs. There'll be 4 blobs to fill in. You will be spending 9 minutes on that. And the reason you're going to spend 9 minutes is because it's worth 4 marks and you add 5. And that will give you enough time to read source A, and to fill in the blobs. Those of you who are going to use Read Write Gold, the machine will be able to read it to you in that short period of time. Question 2 is summarise the differences. You're going to find 2 distinct differences, and you're going to write whatever the difference is, or it might be a similarity, but depending on the question. Say what the difference is. Find me a quote. Do an inference. Then another quote, and then infer from the differences. And the words you need there are this shows, this implies, and more than and less than. Then in question 3, you're going to do your language analysis. You're going to get marks for your subject terminology, textual detail, and effect. So you've done question 1, which was worth 4 marks. Question 2, which was worth 8 marks, so that's 13 minutes. Question 3 is worth 12 marks, so that's 17. Subject terminology, textual detail, effect. And again, all you do is you pick out 2 things you think about the topic, and then find me mini quotes to prove it. Tell me what the subject terminology is, and then explain why that language makes you feel what it does. So what it makes you feel, but then also why it makes you feel that. So the using the because is important there. Then finally, for the reading section, question 4, writer's opinion. So it's worth 16 marks. Writer's opinion. Explain that opinion, what they think. Give me a quote to prove it. And then pick out an individual word or a simile or whatever it is, and tell me how that shows their opinion. So the noun really demonstrates how tragic it was because they used the noun smithereens or whatever it is. And this implies blah, 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 blah. Then do a comparative sentence, and then again, exactly the same process for the other one. You do a quote, you explain their point of view, you pick out a method, and then you just, again, say more than or less than because it's a comparison one. So you get marks for comparison, for textual detail, for methods, which is subject terminology in effect, and for ideas and perspectives. So that's your 4 things. Finally, question 5 is worth 40 marks, so you add 5, so that's 45 minutes, and you are going to, if it's a letter, you're going to do the addresses and the dear and the date. If it's a speech, you'll do an introduction of like, oh, hello, my name is Lindsay Skinner, I'm here to do a speech. If it is a newspaper article, you will do a headline, or I will hit you. And then you're going to break it down into paragraphs. Just make it your argument. I really recommend you plan that. If it is short, that is short and crafted, that is better. And you're going to get marks for things like good vocabulary, varying your sentences, so like maybe some long sentences and then to develop your argument, and then some short punchy ones for effect. Developing your argument with some semicolons, emphasising a point with a little dash, paragraph, one word paragraph or one sentence paragraphs. I can't think of anything else that's really obvious to do with that one. But have a little proofread. Edwina, please write in sentences. I think that is all. So I'm going to go, and I will see you all tomorrow. I will endeavour to bring chocolate. If you've got any questions, let me know. Edwina, you will write in sentences. Cheerio. Bye. I don't know how to end it. Okay, bye.